What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Potomac. This is season 10, episode 18, part 2 of the reunion. And y'all, why did it feel like this part 2 was like going by very quickly? Like, I felt like they were rushing to get to part 3. Like, I was like, girl, 13 minutes into the episode, I said, calm down. Slow down. Also, girl, the way Keiarna, Monique, and Jazzy flopped in all three, I said three of y'all. Jesus. Jesus. But let's get into this review. Sometimes before we get in to the review, we get a little spicy just a little bit. And I don't have anything to talk to you guys about, but I will link a spicy corner I did the day before. I talked about Ashley. I talked about Angel and her conversation or sit down that she had with Essence Magazine. I also talked about the back and forth between Jazzy and Keiarna after the episode aired and them taking shots at each other. So if you're interested in that, please check the link in the description box below. But without further ado, let's move on. All right, y'all. So let's get into this review. So the episode opens up where it left off, where you have the continuation of Wendy versus Ashley. So if you don't remember how we got here, it started off because a viewer's question was posed towards Ashley, basically asking Ashley, what's up with your stank attitude? This season, it seems like you're a lot meaner and messier, and it seems very mean-spirited. Ashley ends up asking, like, where's the proof that I've changed or I've been mean and nasty this season? Angel chimes in and she was like, you were mean to me, you were mean to Stacy, and what about what you said about Wendy when the cameras were down? Andy chimes in and he was like, yeah, you did say Zinwin was in the pen. She also said, we making melodies, not felonies, in that back alley juke joint where she's saying karaoke. Because Ashley would have you to believe that she's singing covers, but your voice has to actually be good in order you to qualify as a cover singer. Girl, you're singing karaoke. Never forget that, Ashley. So she said, we making melodies, not felonies. Zinwin is in the pen. She tries to apologize to Wendy by saying, well, I didn't know the severity of what was going on. And Wendy was like, girl, you can keep it because I heard you had a vendetta against me since the beginning. And Ashley ends up like, let's talk about that, pretty much confirming that she did have a vendetta or a grudge against Wendy. She's been holding on to the whole I have 4 degrees and you address me as Dr. Wendy thing that happened during season 5. But it's crazy how Ashley conveniently leaves out that the only reason why Wendy said that to her is because Ashley tried to call Wendy stupid and tried to demean her. So she came back at you and said, girl, I'm highly educated. I have 4 degrees. Address me as Dr. Wendy. And because you don't have anything and you didn't have anything at that time, it hit you in your chest and you have felt some type of way ever since. Ashley is a weirdo, because if you don't like this lady, why wait until something bad happens to her so you can kick her when she's down? I'd rather you stand in not liking her and being like Giselle, don't talk to me, don't touch me. But because this happened during the colorism situation, Ashley didn't want to get slapped with the colorist identity, so she started being cool with Wendy because your real feelings have come out. I'm not saying Ashley is a colorist, but I am saying that she's a snake. And always been a snake, and I've known she's been a snake since season 1, because unlike people who I've seen jump on the bandwagon during season 5, Ashley has been the same since the beginning. This is the same lady that was walking around town telling everyone that Robin and Juan had 2 nickels in their bank account and was telling everyone that she's broke. All right, that lady been messy since the beginning, okay? But y'all accepted it because you hated Candace. And now that Candace isn't there and you don't have her, because that's the thing, Ashley and Candace are foils of each other. Ashley and Candace, to a degree, are very similar, but Candace is better. And I'm always stand on that hill. But because y'all liked Ashley more because she was more palatable for you, because she was a biracial and she had light skin, you turned a blind eye to what she was saying and doing, and you thought whatever Candace did was so horrible and so wrong, because this is the same Ashley who was upset because she got called wide body after having children, but was gleefully telling Angel she was a catfish. So what are we talking about? Like what are we talking about? So Ashley ends up telling Wendy, I don't vilify my accomplishments. So then Wendy's response to that was, because you don't have any. So then Ashley's response to Wendy was, well, at least I have one social security number. Everyone's gagged at what both of them are saying about each other. I wasn't moved by what Ashley said, because at the end of the day, Wendy and Eddie were not charged with identity fraud. They were charged with insurance fraud. So Wendy responds back to her by saying, and so do I. I have one social security number like you. What are you talking about? And then Ashley's like, but that's not what it says online. 6'7", 6'7". That joke does not make sense to me. It has never been funny to me. So I was like, okay, Ashley, just say 67. Okay. And Wendy was like, but that's not what it says in the documents, Ashley, if you read them. And then when they flash across the screen an article talking about the 67 credit cards, I'm like, yeah, it said that Wendy and Eddie had 67 credit cards, and the prosecution is trying to use that as a motive as to why they might have or may have committed insurance fraud, saying that they're in an immense amount of credit card debt. But if you read the article further, most of those credit cards are expired. So I'm like, Ashley, either your comprehension skills are in the basement, or you didn't read. You just skimmed the headline and you didn't really comprehend what you were reading. So Wendy is like, it never said that I had 67 identities. Like, what are you talking about this? And Ashley's like, that's what it says online. Again, either you can't read or the comprehension skills are in the basement, Ashley. Or you're just lying, but that's something you do all the time, so I'm not surprised, all right? So the conversation continues on with Wendy basically saying, girl, if you had accomplishments or accolades, you would be speaking on them. And that's what I said in my last review, because Ashley doesn't have anything. My response to someone saying that I don't have any accomplishments would not be like me saying, oh, but I have one social security number. No, it would be me saying, I have this degree, I have this degree, I've won this award, I've opened up this business. But Ashley doesn't have anything. This is the same person who sat up on the stage and told Candace she was the least accomplished person on this stage. But yeah, you are the least accomplished person on this stage. Like, let's call a thing, girl. You have nothing to your name. You might want to say G&A, but I told y'all G&A is giving a scheme and money laundering, if you ask me, because it don't make sense. It don't make sense at this juncture anymore. It started off as a clothing line and athleisure wear, and now all of a sudden we doing community outreach. Okay. You had that failed kangaroo hut business. People are always saying that you have some yoga studio, but I've never seen you promote it online or ever talk about the business. So I don't even believe that is true, to be honest. All you have to your name is a failed marriage and 2 kids with a man who seemingly doesn't seem like he is an involved parent, that you have to walk on eggshells around to make sure he don't kick you and your kids out of that house that he bought and paid for, to make sure he sends you money. Because remember, you're the same person that told us that you used a credit card and you were only using it for Uber Eats because he wasn't helping you take care of them kids. Okay, Ashley. All right. So then Andy ends up saying, so I'm assuming you're not going to accept the apology, Wendy. And Wendy says, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I feel like Ashley's full of it. And she is. She ends up saying that Ashley set up on that stage during BravoCon apologizing to me, but she lied when it comes to that apology, because it's a completely different story today. And Ashley is looking like, what are you talking about, Wendy? And she was like, yeah, it's a completely different story, because I know that you texted Stacey basically saying that I deserve what happened to me. Because when Stacey asked you, did you feel bad? You basically said she deserves it. And Ashley's looking at Stacey, and Stacey's like, yeah, girl, that's what you said. And so they showed the text messages. And so Stacey ends up saying, I legit had nightmares last night. Are you as upset? And Ashley said, yes and no. Of course, personally for her beautiful children, but she has been very condescending to many of us. So you're saying because she's been condescending to you, it's okay for her to be in jail. And I'm not saying that Wendy and Eddie should not face like consequences for their actions, but using that same logic that Ashley is using, Ashley should be in jail too, because she protected a predator, a man who we have on video touching people without their consent, a man that she stood in front of to protect. And you don't think you should be in jail? The same person that has been nasty and conduct. Because if we're saying that behavior denotes that you should be in jail, then you should be in prison for at least a good 10 years. Because you've been nasty since season 1. Messy since season 1. Okay, Ashley. So the conversation continues on with Ashley basically saying that she only texted that information to Stacey after she saw Wendy's devilish grin in her mugshot. I'm guessing Ashley thought the mugshot was so funny that it gave her the green light to make fun of this situation or make light of it. When honestly, when I look back at that mugshot, it made me uncomfortable. Eddie definitely looked high as giraffe titties, but Wendy reminded me of that horror movie. I think it's called Smile, where it's like some demon possesses people and they either go insane and they smile when they die, or when they're murdering people, they're smiling. Nothing about Wendy's picture made me laugh. I got uncomfortable. Okay. And so I'm like, Ashley, what? What are you talking about? So then Wendy ends up starting to blow kisses at Ashley. She starts smiling like she did in her mugshot and doing, this, like this, basically saying, girl, the face card is never declining. And it's not, because the lady do look good. Whatever tweaks that Wendy did to her face, whether it was losing weight or she got work done, she looked good. Mama looks great, okay? So then as they're sitting on the stage, Stacey jumps into the argument because Wendy's like, you're lying, Ashley. And Stacey's like, Ashley, you are lying and you're getting caught up in your lies, because when I texted you because I was worried about Wendy, you basically says, well, I mean, she gets what she deserves. And if she potentially did this, it is what it is. That is the energy and what you said, Ashley. So then Ashley is trying to defend herself. And Wendy was like, girl, you're lying right now. The apology didn't mean anything. And Ashley was like, well, I was apologizing because of what I said could have hurt your children. So then Wendy responds to Ashley by saying, girl, my kids don't know your ass. My kids don't know who the hell you are. So then Giselle from the second chair jumps in and she's like, they've met Ashley. And I'm like, Giselle, shut up and stay in the second chair. Stay in second place, ma'am. Be quiet. Okay. So you can tell that Ashley is taken aback by that. But I'm also looking at Ashley, in what world, whether you think somebody deserves to go to jail or not, that you can joke about them potentially losing their freedom and you give a slow, sorry apology and you think they're supposed to be okay with you and they're just supposed to accept it. And also, let me double back to Giselle. Giselle, shut up again, because you knew what Wendy was trying to say. That basically, yes, they have met Ashley, but they don't know that lady. They don't have a personal relationship with Ashley, big four-headed ass Darby. So be quiet from the second chair. So continuing back on with Ashley, in what world can you do that to somebody and you think they're just going to take your apology? And my thing about it is Ashley is proving that her apology meant nothing, because if you apologize and you are sincere about it, whether the person takes it or not, means that you're okay with it and you don't start having a pissy attitude after it. The fact that she's pissy after it means that apology was sorry and it wasn't real and it was not genuine. And honestly, Ashley is lucky that she's doing this to Wendy and this is not another person, or this is some random person that she knows in her real life, because somebody in DC probably would have caught you lacking leaving that juke joint. Would have ran up on you like Portia did in that back alley when they was having that Christmas party during that season. You would have got 2 to the forehead messing with certain women who so I don't understand Ashley. I don't understand her. Okay. So then Ashley talks about can we circle back to the whole thing about me being messy? She ends up saying that things are just different. So then Keiarna says, what about the group is different? So then Ashley says, I need to realize that the dynamics of this group is different. She ends up saying that we had thicker skin. Giselle says, yeah, we had thicker skin. And then Wendy says we were tougher. I know y'all are lying, because that lies y'all tell from the pits of hell, because all 3 of y'all are sensitive. Okay, Giselle, who was so upset with Candace for calling her house a $900,000 teardown, you were pissed at that lady. You wanted a public apology on camera. The same Giselle, when you hurt her feelings, she coordinates a concerted effort to ice people out of the group, has tough skin. The same Giselle, who was so pissed at Wendy for cussing her out that she advocated violence against her. You don't have tough skin, ma'am. You don't. And Wendy, let me tap on your wig. You're the same lady that when they insinuated, and when I mean they, Giselle and Robin and Ashley insinuated that your husband potentially was cheating on you or making you feel insecure about your body, so you got work done and you cuss them out so badly because your feelings were hurt. Don't do that. Don't do that, girl. Don't say that y'all were tougher back then. No. You're lying. And Ashley, the same Ashley who couldn't take Candace. This is the same Ashley who got so offended by being called wide body after she pushed out a kid. The same Ashley that couldn't get over the fact that everybody was talking so poorly about her husband and about his felonious ways, that you were always trying to attack other people's marriages, but y'all aren't sensitive and y'all had tougher skin. Yes, the dynamics in the group have changed. They have. But y'all are still sensitive. Half of y'all run to HR when somebody disrespects you or hits you in your chest a little too deeply. So miss me with that. Okay? So they flash back to Karen and Ashley, and Karen telling Ashley, clankety clank, make sure your husband don't drop the sub, girl. And she went to jail. And Michael is still free. Okay. Then the back and forth between Karen and Giselle when she was like, you're a broke down whore from Hampton with a hot box, and that's why you went to Sing Sing. And Giselle saying, girl, I'm going to tell your drunk truth, your lying truth, all of that. Okay. So Ashley says she needs to acknowledge, or she can acknowledge, that perhaps she needs to adapt more to the various sensitivity levels in the group. So then Giselle ends up saying, the chin check of it all, the catfish of it all, that honestly would have not been a big deal back in the day. So then Keiarna said the honesty of it all. And I'm like, Keiarna, these women have never been honest. So that was never something that you could throw in anybody's face. So then Angel jumps in because she's irritated at the fact that Giselle brought up the chin check and the catfish of it all. She goes on this diatribe talking about, I get it, Giselle. I'm a black woman. Black women are not a monolith. You did not need to use me to pinpoint me. And I was like, Angel, you're missing the point, because even though I don't like Giselle, I got what she was saying, because she ends up saying these are examples that I'm referring to this season, which is true. Everybody was constantly using the catfish, the chin check of it all. That stuff potentially would have rolled off everybody's back last season, but you do have different women on this show this season who do have different sensitivity levels. So what she said was true, Angel. So then Andy ends up saying, do you think you would have done anything differently, Angel? And Angel basically says, I regret that I did not show my bubblier side, and I wish that I would have done that more. Because all of this conversation started with them talking about Angel's package in part 1. So we finished that. So then we move over to Ashley. And even with Andy saying that, Ashley Darby entered this season with her first annual second bloom ball, whatever that is, I was like, Ashley, you should have caught that shade that they don't really care about you anymore, girl. The writing is on the wall. So they run Ashley's package. We see her sister. We see her mom. We see her with Josh. So then a question from somebody in South Africa is like, Ashley, did you really get $20 million from Michael? She didn't get shit from Michael. I'm so sick of everyone acting like this lady got that much money from Michael. All that lady got from Michael was that house and maybe a couple of checks for child support. And that's it. I've been telling people since day one that Michael may be devious, but he ain't stupid. He had a first ex-wife, and that's the lady who really getting his money, because I think people have forgotten that Michael has other children, other kids that he had to pay child support for and might potentially still be paying child support for, because I think Ashley was a little bit older than his kids when they got together. So I'm just like, in what world did Ashley get $20 million? They said Michael's net worth was $20 million, but Ashley didn't get $20 million from Michael. Do you think she would be on this show if she got $20 million from Michael? So Ashley responds to this saying that I've learned that I to never speak about my money on this platform. So she's like, I'm going to keep that to myself. So then they start talking about her relationship with Josh. And they ask her, so are you and Josh still together? And she was like, yeah, we're still seeing each other. So then Stacey is like, you're still dating Josh? You're still dating Josh. And Keiarna's like, that's what she just said. So then Stacey's like, girl, so you brought that man on camera to humiliate him? And then Wendy's like, yeah, you did humiliate him. And then Ashley's like, I didn't humiliate him. And then Angel chimes in and she was like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. And then in this moment, I see you, Stacey. Stacey not to be played with. Because Stacey knows how to back these women up off of her, but she also knows how to show them, girl, if you want to get physical, I can get physical too. Because in this moment, Ashley is invading Stacey's space by putting her arms in her space. Stacey moves her arm out the way, where she was like, you hear that, Andy? Like, she does this. And it was very direct. Like, girl, keep pushing me if you want to. The same way she walked over to Cookie when she told Giselle to move out her way, and she pointed at Cookie after Cookie told her to stop pointing at her, and then she twisted it like this with the middle finger. They need to, y'all better stop with Stacey. Don't let the quirkiness fool you. We know Stacey is playing a character, but if the Detroit ever come out of her, somebody is probably going to be laid out on that floor, because that lady is not afraid of y'all.
I told him I wanted your natural reaction.
So clearly it is a new day, okay? My iPad died while I was filming last night, and honestly, I'm just going to take it as a sign that I need to start saving for a new iPad, because it's been dying a lot quicker lately, and it's been taking a longer time for it to charge. So I said, you know what? I'm going to give me something to eat and go to bed, and that's what I did, and here we are. So where I got cut off at was the continuation of them talking about Ashley and Josh and the whole situationship. You have Stacey asking everybody on stage, did you hear Ashley? Because Ashley yells out, I broke up with him the night before. So Stacey is like, you're basically admitting what me, Wendy, and Angel are saying, that you humiliated this man blatantly. And Ashley doesn't understand that she just admitted that. And so you see Angel raise her hand after Stacey is like, who heard that? And then Wendy like raises her hand, and Giselle is like, girl, put your hand down. It was actually kind of funny. So things kind of calm down a little bit. And Ashley explains that pretty much she broke up with Josh the night before, but her feelings were still the same. You hear Wendy and Stacey both say, how convenient. And Josh wanted to meet up with her, but Ashley said that if they met up, they had to meet up on camera. Honestly, Josh to me is dumb, and I'm not trying to be mean, but he got low self-esteem. So somebody has low self-esteem. Because there's no way someone breaks up with you 2 days or the night before, you still hang out with them after they give you this stipulation of like, if we hang out, we have to be on camera. My spidey senses would have started tingling, because I would automatically think that, oh, you want to set me up or play in my face or embarrass me. And that's what happened to Josh. And the fact that he's still messing around with Ashley is crazy, because I'm like, if you just want to be with a biracial lady, you live in the DMV. You have Virginia, Maryland, in DC. There is a plethora of biracial women that you can date that are probably 10 times better than Ashley and don't have the baggage that Ashley has. Because you are 30, she is 37, sir. You got options. Unless you don't feel like you got options, and that's where the low self-esteem comes into play. Because everybody got options to a degree. Okay? So we move on from that, and they start talking about the whole Jackson situation with Ashley kissing Jackson. Andy wants to emphasize the fact that Jackson is 27 years old. They also flash back to when Sharice brought Jackson to the Potomacs and Ponies event. And Andy also tells Ashley many of the fans felt like what you did was very inappropriate. They also bring up Sharice speaking out publicly, doing her press tour and saying what needs to be said or what she feels needs to be said, because Andy also says Sharice says that she felt uncomfortable. Ashley says that she was fully prepared to take full accountability for what she did and ready for Sharice to be upset and apologize. But she said, no, Sharice laughed it off. But now all of a sudden she's doing this press tour. And she's like, why didn't she just say that to my face? She had the opportunity to. So then Andy ends up asking everybody on stage, how do y'all feel about what went down between Jackson and Ashley? And I think it was Wendy. Wendy ends up saying she thought it was terrible. She said, once I see you as a child, you will always be a child to me, no matter how old you get. And I agree with Wendy. So then Andy ends up asking Ashley, so did he make the first move or did you make the first move? Ashley ends up saying, he did. Of course he did. I wouldn't do that. And I said, girl, that's a lie. That's a lie. Okay. So then they start asking pretty much you alluded to there being more that happened on Watch What Happens Live. Like, was it only a kiss, Ashley? And so Ashley's like, yes, it was only a kiss, but they were like, but you alluded to it being more. I think that was Stacey or Wendy that said, but you alluded to there being more. So then Ashley says, yes, I alluded to that. I also did it in front of Charisse as well, you know? And she was like, but nothing more happened. Nothing more happened. Andy kind of looks at her like, basically you're admitting that you blatantly was lying. So we're on Stacey's neck for lying, which Stacey does, but we can't be on your neck. And like I said, Ashley, it's common. It's what Ashley does, is lie. So I'm like, girl, wow. The hypocrisy for you to be on this high horse and being nasty to Stacey, but you lied 3 times. You lied on Watch What Happens Live. You lied to Charisse's face on the episode, and you lied in your confessionals. And you even lied 4 times, because you lied doing podcast interviews. So like, girl, you're a liar. Okay. So then you hear Angel say, I don't like the fact that she even put that out there about her son. Like, why did you have to turn it into that? And then Ashley tries to say, well, Charisse told me numerous times she wanted me to date her son. And then Giselle jumps in and was like, yeah, she would refer to Ashley as her daughter-in-law. So then Andy ends up saying, it seems like Jackson had an attraction towards Ashley. Like, he's not a child, he's not a boy. But then Stacey brings back in reality and says, girl, at the end of the day, she broke mom code and she broke girl code. They again want to emphasize the age difference between Jackson and Ashley by saying, Ashley says Jackson and I are 10 years apart. So Ashley's 37, Jackson is 27. And she's like, Charisse was always saying that she wanted me to date her son and be her daughter-in-law. You hear Angel say, like, girl, maybe it was a joke. Like, maybe she thought it was something cheeky to say. Like, I don't think that meant she wanted you to do that. And here's the thing. I'm tired of this story, but I will say this. Ashley is stupid. The desperation, you could see her being desperate this season. And I think she was painfully aware about how bad her storylines were this season, because I'm just looking at Ashley like, why would you ever introduce a story to us where you are not the victor? A story where we don't have the context of everything. We don't have, like, y'all don't have proof of Charisse calling you her daughter-in-law. You haven't even produced a text message of her saying that funny, or like, trying to be funny in text messages. You don't have Charisse saying, oh, I want you to date my son, or, oh, Jackson is available. You don't have that. And like Angel says, girl, it could have just been a joke. Like, you weren't supposed to take it literally. And I'm just looking at Ashley like, why would you ever do that to yourself? Like, you really thought this story was going to be cute and it blew up in your face. And I'm like, Ashley, I really do not believe thought about everything. Like, there were only 3 options when it came to this situation. Either one, people were going to support Jackson because they felt like, girl, you put this man's business out there and he didn't even get the opportunity to, speak on the situation. 2, people feel like you played in Charisse's face. Like, yes, Charisse may have been a part of this to a certain degree, but you are the one that alluded to there being more, that you were coming in and out her house and you were worried about her getting caught on her Ring camera. Or 3, nobody roots for any of y'all. But either way, no one is going up for Ashley. Like, you are still the villain. And that's how I know she didn't think about this, because Ashley really thought this was going to be a cute story. But I'm like, do you know who you were married to? A pasty, wet demon of a predator. A man that we have video proof of him touching on, like, cameramen and PA's butts without their consent. And then I'm like, Ashley, did you not think about, like, girl, you met him at 15. People's minds were going to be like, they're 10 years apart. And the show's been on 10 years and she's known for Charisse for 10 years. When did she meet? Like, I don't think Ashley really thought about that. And I'm just like, girl, like, Ashley knew her, like, this season was not good for her. So she added that in there. And I'm like, you did yourself a huge disservice. So then they start talking about her sister. Andy ends up saying, like, he actually felt really bad for her sister when he saw her breaking down. So then he's like, so how was your mom and your stepdad? Ashley's like, ooh, I don't like that word, stepdad. She hesitates, but she's like, my sister's doing well. She's doing great in school. She's thriving. And then Andy ends up saying, well, her dad, is in and out of rehab. So did it take? And Ashley ends up saying, well, it's not my business to share. That lets me know that Sheila and that little sister dug in Ashley's ass. they got in Ashley's behind because Ashley was so willing to talk about this situation throughout the season. And now we're on the reunion and you can't explain to us whether or not this man actually committed the rehab or did he check himself out? Did he go immediately back to the bottle and relapse? Like, the fact that she was like, it's not my business to tell. Oh, they cussed you out, girl. Y'all had an argument about this. So Ashley is just like, yeah, it's not my business to tell, So then Andy ends up asking, how is your mom's health? And she's like, it's not the best. And leaving, and she left it right at that. I said, ooh, girl, I know she letting that sister cuss you out. Oh, they said, you played with us, so we about to play with you. So then they asked about the whole Mauricio of it all and that connection. We knew Mauricio was not going to pull up on Ashley. They talk about how Giselle was very much like, this can't happen. And like, y'all can't do that. Andy ends up telling Ashley, it seemed like you didn't even care about him being associated with Kyle. Like, it seems like you don't really care about girl code. So then Ashley tried to say, well, no, Stacey was the one that wanted to get on Mauricio. And Stacey said, no, girl, I wanted Mauricio for you. And then Giselle's like, no, girl, you were the one that said you wanted to take a ride on Mauricio. And they flash back. And I'm like, it wasn't really giving flirting to me. But I'm also looking at Giselle like, girl, you said in your confessional that you would like to lay down horizontally with Mauricio if he was not attached to Kyle. So what are we talking about? Stacey wasn't in that confessional saying that she would sleep with that man. You did. Ashley was also the one that was like, well, he's single now, He's single now. Like, what are we talking about? So Stacey's like, no, I just wanted to help her get a man so she would leave me alone. So then Andy ends up saying, well, word on the street is that you were dating a politician. Giselle makes a face like, okay. And then Stacey says, that's impossible. This scene tickled me because Stacey said, that's impossible. And Ashley says, yes, I was. And Ashley's like, what do you mean it's impossible? And Stacey said, not with your history. And Ashley's like, so what is that supposed to mean? What history? She said, girl, you slept with your best friend's son or with your friend's son. Like, what are you talking about? And Ashley gets mad and she's like, sit over there with your stank breath, Stacey. Sit over there. And I said, girl, Stacey wrapped you up. And because Ashley was like, I'm an upstanding woman, a good looking upstanding. Like, she was like big on the upstanding. I said, okay. Stacey said, girl, you're a trollop. No politician should be messing with you. So then Andy said, Giselle, well, did you know about it? And Giselle was like, yeah, like she's stuttering. And then she was like, well, I thought you were about to ask me that because I was dating a congressman. And everyone's like, girl, what? When were you dating a congressman? Even Wendy was like, girl, I'm confused. When were you dating a congressman? And so then Andy tries to help her clean it up by saying, so are you saying you were dating the congressman after the season? And Giselle's like, oh, yeah, after the season. No, she was probably dating that man during the season. So then you hear Keiarna say, like, Giselle, you have an amazing dating life. And Stacey's like, yeah, why don't we see it? Like, why don't you ever bring it to the show like that? So then Giselle said, well, like, let's be clear. A congressman would not want to be on the show. Granted, I do agree with that. A congressman probably would not want to be associated with reality TV because it would probably have people not taking them seriously. But I'm also with everybody else. How come Giselle gets to date all these men or have this life of dating in the shadows, but we don't get to see it? But yet she asks for transparency from everybody else. That's a crock of SHIT, if you ask me. Okay? So then they end up asking Ashley, like, what's the next chapter for you post-divorce? Ashley says she writing a children's book. Wendy pissed me off when they look at the children's book and she's like, oh, who's the brown-skinned girl? What's her name? And she was like, I thought her name would have been like Cam. Shut up. No, her name's not Cam. I think she said the girl's name was like Anita or something. And everyone's like, Ashley, that's so sweet. I don't want to read nothing to my children with the author's name being Ashley Darby. Nothing. But Ashley says the book is supposed to be like the elements, and it's supposed to be about Dean and Dylan. Mind you, them kids on that, I was like, they all look white. I said, did the kids see themselves as white? Probably. They're more white than black than anything. Like, so yeah, the white, they could be white kids on this book cover, because it's like, because I was like, shouldn't they be a little tanner, just a smidge? But like, nah, yeah, they more white than black, so that makes sense. But like I said, don't nobody want no book from no Ashley. I wouldn't buy no children's book from Ashley. Like someone said, you slept with your friend's son. You know. No. No. So like I said in the intro, the three people who flopped for me in this part 3 were Keiarna, Monique, and Jazzy. So let's start off with Miss Floppiana, the first, Keiarna. So they run Keiarna's package. When they do the initial package, they do the whole like my life, my business, my cars, my condo, my everything. And she is saying the words. And I'm like, Keiarna, I really do hope you're in on the joke, because nobody thought that was a moment, girl. Like, people were actually like laughing at you, not with you. You look like a cross between Shin Yu from Mulan and Ursula the Sea Witch from Ariel. Them eyebrows was in the middle of your forehead, girl, almost touching your hairline. Not a cute look. Don't you ever Botox the forehead like that again, girl. Or at least if you're gonna Botox your forehead, don't argue with people, because you look rising. So they show us her package. We see her in the condo with Giselle, talking about her and Gregory in a good place. We then see her getting into it with Jazzy at Preakness and in Nevis. We then also see her getting into it with Wendy at the second Bloom Ball. And then we see her getting into it with Stacy. And this moment with Stacy that she got into at the Reasonably Shady event shows that Keiarna is trying to gaslight the audience and make it seem like we are the ones pushing for her and Greg to get married. When, girl, you told us last season when you and Greg were building that house that when y'all moved in together, you saw within a couple of months that he was going to be proposing to you. So stop trying to act like we are crazy for thinking that you want to be married. And in this moment with Stacy, you also proved that you want to be married, because y'all were arguing and you told Stacy, your character is flawed and I should have never trusted you around my husband. And Stacy hit you with that one hit a quitter, girl. You don't have one. And everyone was gagged. You already subconsciously or even consciously in your head are referring to Greg as your husband because you want to be a wife. Stop playing with us, Keiarna, and stop trying to gaslight people into thinking that we're trying to force you into something you don't want to be in, girl. It's not cute. Okay? So the conversation continues on with her rummaging behind her back, trying to get her picture frame. When I tell you Giselle and Wendy's reaction to this tickled me, because Giselle looked like she swallowed a laugh. Like, she immediately was like, and then Wendy's eyes were closed, but you could see a smirk. Like, she's like, Like, they wanted to laugh in her face, because why would you bring that picture frame? And then what annoyed me about the picture frame is that it had writing on it, and she never read what was on the, like, what was on the message. Like, I was like, why show us this message if you're not going to explain to us what's on it? Annoyed. So Andy's like, oh, it's the picture frame. And she's like, yeah, my picture frame. Like, I brought the picture frame because everybody was talking about it. And she was like, I still love it so much, even though with the negative comments. She said, one thing about me is like, I actually love picture frames. It's symbolic. I said, in what way? And explain it. How is this picture frame symbolic? You don't even have a picture in the picture frame, Keiarna. So that lets me know you're not even using it for what it, maybe that is the symbolism. You're not even using the picture frame for what it needs to be used for, what it's intended to be used for. Because, girl, that don't make no sense. How is it symbolic? Like, a picture frame is used to memorialize special moments and events. You don't even have a picture in there that is special to you and Greg's relationship to be in that picture frame. You're pissing me off. You're pissing me off right now, Keiarna. So Andy brings up Greg going to the jewelry store and how a lot of fans were upset or mad on Keiarna's behalf that he did not propose to her or had her feeling like it was going to be a ring. So Keiarna says, well, I can understand why people feel that way and are mad at Greg, but I'm not mad at Greg. So then Andy ends up asking Wendy, so what you think about this? Like, what do you think about the picture frame? And Wendy says, girl, if she like it, I love it. I'm like, what is she supposed to say? Andy, this is stupid. This is dumb. So then Giselle ends up saying, I was just thinking because he went to the jewelry store, you were going to get jewelry, not a picture frame. And Keiarna's like, well, I understood how you could think that. Then Andy brings up Giselle saying in her confessional that Keiarna lost her power by moving back in with Greg. And you could tell that Keiarna wanted to say something slick, but she held her tongue. But she ended up saying something to the effect of like, yeah, like, what did you mean by that, Giselle? So Giselle ends up saying like, I've always been taught, by the old aunties, like, you don't move in with a man unless you have a commitment. That's just what has been taught to me. And so Keiarna says, okay, I get that, but we're like a different generation. Yeah, but what she's saying isn't wrong. I actually agree with Giselle. Keiarna moved out of her house with Greg because she wanted a commitment, only to move back in the house with Greg without said commitment. I'm sorry, you guys. There's like a smudge on my glasses. So it just doesn't make sense to me why she would continue being in this relationship if the things that you want are not being met. And I feel like Keiarna wants to be that type of girl to be like, I don't need to be married. We could just have a lifelong partnership. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But what I do think is wild to me with Keiarna is like, it's clear that that's what you want. And it's okay to want to be in a romantic relationship. The issue that people take up with romantic relationships is a lot of women act like they gonna die if they don't get one. When at the end of the day, you don't need romantic relationships to have a fulfilling life. Platonic and familiar love is what keeps people afloat and steady. It's nice to be in a romantic relationship, but it is not a need. It's a want. And I get what Keiarna is trying to do, not trying to label herself as that, but it's the more you try to act like that's not what you want, the more you look crazy to people, especially to me. Okay? Because I'm not understanding what was the point of moving out just to move back in and you still don't get the things that you want. That's kind of dumb. So the conversation continues on with a viewer's question basically being like, Keiarna, why are you trying to act like having a condo is better than a commitment? It's giving sugar baby. Stop trying to make us feel like Greg's gonna put a ring on it. I said, ooh, okay, girl. And you could tell that had Keiarna like, oh, okay. So then Angel jumps into the conversation and she was like, well, I need to say something. Like, let me say something. And Keiarna's like, actually, Angel, but then she lets Angel speak. And Angel says, she is the furthest thing from a sugar baby. Like, and there's no world where that is her. Like, she is a strong, independent woman, and a lot of people are just projecting. So then you see Keiarna getting ready to like cut Angel off, and she's like, but let me speak, because I can speak for myself. And I don't think Keiarna means to be rude, but that tone is rude. And honestly, if I was Angel, I would not speak up for Keiarna anymore. I would let Keiarna have it. Be like, girl, when them girls get to whacking you, fight on by yourself, because I'm sick of you cutting me off or having this sharp tone with me like I'm doing something wrong when I'm trying to help you and defend you. So Keiarna says she's been a hard worker and she's been working and having her own businesses since she was 23. So then the question is posed towards Wendy, where the person is like, it seems like you just didn't want to be friends with Keiarna. Why couldn't you just own what she was saying about the speaking engagement? So Wendy says she felt like there was malicious intent on Keiarna's behalf when it came to this whole entire situation. Keiarna's like, no, it wasn't. Don't even try to like put that out there. And so Wendy's like, you were upset with me because I didn't wave to you while I was speaking. They flash back to Ashley's second Bloom Ball, where Wendy is like, I was on stage. You expected me to stop speaking while I was on stage just to wave to you? And Keiarna's like, well, when I see people when I'm speaking, I wave to them too. And they're going back and forth. And Wendy's like, you're upset because you said I didn't speak to you, but that's not the case because I did speak to you. And this was embarrassing. Now, this was very, you already embarrassed yourself with the picture frame, and then you brought this picture because Wendy's like, I gave you a hug after speaking. And Keiarna's like, no, you didn't, Wendy. No, you didn't. And Wendy pulls out her phone and she's like, yes, I did. And she's like, you're lying, Wendy. No, you didn't. And I have proof. So Keiarna pulls out a picture of the room that they were in to show how small it was. And I guess that's why Keiarna expected Wendy to wave to her, because the setting was very intimate. But Wendy was like, no, girl, I have the proof. I have the proof. And then what we find out is that someone who was at the event took a picture of Wendy and Keiarna hugging each other and sent it or texted to Wendy saying, I don't understand why she's behaving this way. Like, when you guys saw each other, it was all love. Like, this is so shocking to me. So Keiarna pulls out the picture and she's like, this is the room we were in, Andy. And so they pass the picture down, and Giselle is looking at Wendy's phone like, and like, like making the picture bigger and like, ooh, that is you, girl. And they show the picture, and Wendy hands her phone to Andy, and he's like, yeah, this is you hugging her in the picture. And then he's like, yeah, that's a small but beautiful room. And so Wendy's like, why did you never tell the ladies that I hugged you, that I did acknowledge you? You're going around saying that I didn't acknowledge you when I did. Like, you conveniently left that piece out. And so Keiarna didn't have anything. I was like, Keiarna, it's giving that you wanted an issue with. Really, to me, what happened is Keiarna picked up Karen's beef and Angel picked up Keiarna's beef with Wendy. Because I'm like, she hugged you, so she did acknowledge you. You were making it seem like she just blatantly ignored you and disregarded you. Like, she hugged you, Keiarna. So then Andy ends up saying, we're not going to get anywhere with this. So we start talking about Stacey and Keiarna's issues. Andy ends up asking her, like, girl, what is your issue with Stacey, Keiarna? Keiarna basically says her issue with Stacey is Stacey tried to label her aggressive, but she feels like she has not done anything worse than anybody else in the group. Stacey is making a face and she's like, that's absolutely not true. You have been the worst. And then Tia ends up saying, that word is kind of harsh, isn't it, though? And then you have Keiarna calling Stacey a black Karen. Stacey ends up saying, I'm sorry, I absolutely understand the connotation and I have a responsibility as a black woman not to perpetuate the same stereotype. And I said, thank you, Stacey. Then she cleared Keiarna when she said, but she has the responsibility as a black woman to act accordingly and to behave herself. And I said, clock it. Because here's the thing, as a brown skin or dark skin black woman, it depends on who sees me. Keiarna is aggressive. She very much so is aggressive. And the thing about Keiarna that gets her in trouble is the aggression isn't to everybody, it's to one person. So if that one person feels like you are very aggressive towards them and you exhibit aggressive behavior, then they can call you that. It's one thing as a black woman to be called aggressive when you're in a racially charged situation and you are the victim and you're not raising your voice, or you raise your voice, or you're trying to defend yourself. It's another thing to actually be in confrontation with someone and you are actually being aggressive. Keiarna has to own that, because there were multiple moments throughout the season where she was being aggressive towards Stacey. When they were at the second Bloom Ball, the first episode, hi. Even before that, you said that lady had beady eyes and she was trying to squeeze out a tear at Giselle's house. Then we get to the second Bloom Ball with the whole hi situation. Then you follow that up with basically telling Stacey that you could fight if, like, Stacey already knows that you could fight if you want to. When she was like, girl, it seems like you have all this energy for me. Like, you like to pop off with me. And you're like, I'll pop off if I need to. Then we get to the Preakness event. You're calling her a hoe, making fun of how she talks. And then she's like, yeah, girl, I know your chin checked me. And you're like, really, Stacey? Like you had an attitude. Then we get to Reasonably Shady, where you're like, your character's flawed, Stacey. You got your hands in this lady's face. It got so heated to the point where Wendy got in between y'all and started dancing and stuff because she was worried that you was gonna hit the lady. So you're giving off that energy. And I do not like how y'all are trying to compare Keiarna to Candace, because Candace was never giving that. Candace never gave that she was going to fight you. She would verbally annihilate you, but she never gave that she was going to fight you. And most of the time when she was coming at somebody, she was responding to the way that they were treating her. So let's not even do that. Keiarna been tripping. And I don't negate the fact that she probably feels some type of way about Wendy and Stacey, and she thought that they were her real friends, but she does a piss poor job of explaining herself. And because Keiarna can't explain herself, her initial reaction is to go to getting aggressive. And that's just what it is, and we gonna call a thing a thing. Y'all not gonna have people out here being afraid to use words when that's what is happening, okay? And she cleared her up, because then they showed the flashback of at the Reasonably Shady event, and she's yelling at Stacey, and she looked crazy. So then Keiarna is like, girl, that's a lie. After Stacey's like, the world saw the way that you were behaving. She was like, that's a lie, Stacey. That's a lie. And then they start talking about the whole lactose intolerant situation where Stacey was ordering burrata and they were trying to act like because Stacey ordered the burrata, she was trying to kill Keiarna. And my thing about it is your responsibility as the one that has allergies, as someone who has allergies. Praise God, it's not food allergies, all right? But it is your responsibility as someone that has allergies to let people know. You informed her that you had allergies, that you're lactose intolerant, which technically I don't think lactose intolerance is an allergy. You're not going to die from that. Like, it'd be one thing if you had a peanut allergy and your throat was going to swell up. But if you didn't tell her that you walk around with an EpiPen to, like, emphasize the severity of your allergy or whatever you want to call it, then, girl, she can order the burrata. Just don't eat it. Okay? So she's like, yeah, you tried to offer me a peace plan, but there was no damn peace. She was like, what kind of friend are you? So then Wendy jumps in and she's like, what kind of friend are you? You the one that was chin checking your friend right there. And then Stacey's like, yeah, right. You were chin checking your friend. So then you have Keiarna and Angel grappling, trying to like respond to it and everything. And so then Stacey says, okay, yeah, great alliance, sadness and madness. I said, get him. Get him. Get him. So then Keiarna feeling defeated because she was like, move along. We can move along, Andy, because you don't have a response. You don't have none of your responses during your segment were good, Keiarna. You should be embarrassed. So then Andy's like, we're going to take a quick break and get ready for Jazzy. So then while they're sitting there, you have Winnie saying, ooh, ooh. And then you end up hearing Keiarna say, ooh. What does Carroll County has to say? What does Carroll County has to say? And I said, that's all you had to say is what does Carroll County has to say? Keiarna? What? Girl. Girl. So then we end up seeing Jazzy get on the stage. But before Jazzy gets on the stage, Wendy ends up saying, good, because I'm tired of doing like the work for her. I don't know if she was talking about like wrapping up Keiarna, or was she talking about the reunion? I was confused by this statement. Maybe something got cut off. But we see Jazzy get on stage. It takes 3 people to help her sit down. The dress looks worse. Her dress and Monique's dress looked way worse sitting down in close up. Like half the roses looked like they were falling off. Like they needed to take a lot of things off. So like I said, there were 3 flops for the night for me. First was Keiarna, then was Jazzy. So let's get into the flop number 2. So Jazzy's sitting on the stage and Andy congratulates her on being married. She says, thank you. We find out that they celebrated 6 months of marriage. She looks uncomfortable in that corset. I know it's digging into her sides because she's sitting at an angle, and I don't think it's because she felt like she needed to. I think she's sitting that way because that corset hurts. Okay. Andy ends up asking her, so what teams does Darius play for? Now we found out it's the Patriots. He then asks her, like, have you met Cardi B? She says no because the game that Cardi was at, she did not attend. So the conversation continues on with Andy asking, so where do you and Keiarna stand? Like, where's y'all's friendship now? And she says we don't have a friendship, mainly because the day before the reunion, Keiarna saw her and Ashley on the train, and Keiarna didn't speak to Jazzy. She basically ignored her. And Jazzy is trying to be dismissive by being like, I didn't recognize her. I didn't recognize her. And she has her back turned to her. And she was like, I didn't recognize her. I didn't recognize her. So then Ashley's like, you really didn't recognize her? And she's like, yeah, I didn't recognize her. You know, she didn't speak, so I didn't speak. So then Andy says, it does seem like you did recognize her. So then she says, no, honestly, she looks beautiful right now. Basically saying the reason why she didn't recognize her the day before is because she looked like a dog. And everyone caught the shade. So then this was the first flop for Jazzy, where the question was posed to her, what did Keiarna specifically say about Wendy that was such a big deal that she said behind her back? Jazzy talks in circles, basically saying that the reason why she brought that up in Nevis was because of the way Keiarna was treating her, and that out of respect of where they were, she did not want to bring it up. So I'm like, you have the floor to bring it up now because you and her are not cool. So why are you not saying what it is? That leads me to believe that what was said was not that deep, or you just don't want to say it. But either way, it looks lame, and this was the first flop. So you hear Wendy say, no, I believe what she's saying. And based off of the way that Keiarna has treated Wendy thus far, I would understand why Wendy would feel that way. Then Keiarna says, girl, you got 15 minutes. Please don't waste them on me. I said, okay, girl, I give you that point, Keiarna. So then Jazzy said, Keiarna, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Like, if you really want to go there, let's talk about how you stole Greg from his wife. Girl, the way Wendy said, the way Giselle was like, and then even Stacey and Ashley were like looking at each other. Stacey's like, girl, did she just say that? Like, did she just say that? So then you hear, what's her name? Keiarna say, you're a lying ass bitch, Jazzy. You're lying. You're lying. I said, girl, is she? Is she? Because you're getting real upset. So then Giselle ends up saying, time out, time out, time out. And then Wendy's like, no, girl, time in, time in, time in. And I said, girl, this is messy. This is so messy. So then Jazzy is sitting there like, girl, you told me that. And so Keiarna's like, let's move on. Let's move on. So then they start arguing back and forth about money. And Keiarna was trying to demean Jazzy being a flight attendant, which I think is a good profession. So I didn't get the dig. She was trying to make it seem like Jazzy was broke and destitute. Cause she kept saying like, where's your money come from? Like you're gonna be serving me the next flight I book. And then Jazzy ends up saying like, whose money are you gonna be using to book that flight? Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? So everyone's laughing at their back and forth. And then you have Keiarna saying, girl, you got up on this stage looking cheap. And then you have Jazzy saying, girl, this is custom. This is custom, girl. Then Keiarna stands up and like, this is custom. You don't see this body? And I said, girl, if y'all don't sit down, because I'm not invested in either one of them going back and forth. But I'm like, sit down. Sit down. I was like, this is dumb. This is dumb. And they're still steady going back and forth. I just saw on Twitter, No Chaser TV posting that Keiarna is threatening to like file a lawsuit against Jazzy because of her being on Carlos King saying that what's her name? That Jazzy said that Keiarna told her that when she met Greg, that her and Greg had been together for 3 years and that Greg's divorce was only 3 years old. So to her, she feels like that was overlapping. Jazzy felt like that was overlapping. But they're fighting online. Let's get into that right quick. This is how the situation starts off with Keiarna saying this. At this point, it's giving obsessed. This level of desperation is beyond messy. It's despicable. I have never been confused about my role in my man's life. From day one, I knew about his children. You will never see his ex popping up in matching pajamas with his kids while I'm claiming him because I have always known exactly where I stand. That was a shot at Jazzy because that's what happened with her and Darius. It continues on with her saying, I've been on this show for 3 years and I have never had an off timeline. We are gainfully employed, emotionally grounded, and living a happy, cohesive life. I've never lied for relevancy. I never lost my flute because I couldn't keep up. That's also a shot at Jazzy because word on the street is she was supposed to be full time, but lost her flute. And they gave it, I don't think they gave it to Keiarna, but they just demoted her to a friend of on season 9. It continues on by saying, there will be water in my flowers at my wedding because I'm not a part of anyone's security plan. I guess she ain't have water at her, like water in her flowers. But it's also a shot at yourself, Keiarna, because you acting like you don't want to get married. But here you are stating that you're going to have a wedding. She says, I don't do back and forth. I get paid for my time. Next stop is invoices for defamation of character. Now, I will say this. We don't like housewives that sue. We don't. Especially if it's not something serious. So suing this lady for defamation when you already lost your case, which I think you should have won against that lady with them demonic eyebrows that look like a Pixar reject, that would be a stupid decision, Keiarna. So it continues on with Jazzy responded to Keiarna by saying this, girl, the desperation is that we were cool before you suddenly got insecure about your flute once you got it. When I came around in my second season, you were so scared to lose it that you started spiraling. I was never confused and you know the real story and timeline. You of all people know what aired in season 9 wasn't the full context of our timeline conversation, which is the only reason his child's mother even said anything. You're bitter, your ex-NFL player didn't take you seriously. So now you're taking it out on me, calling me desperate when you were perfectly fine with me until the camera started. She continues on by saying, well, until the camera started rolling. She continues on and says, and let's be clear, fresh off of chapter 7 with your debt handled by Greg isn't exactly giving Real Housewife. Oh, girl, she chapter 7 bankruptcy. Okay. It says more like fraud, brokey, save sugar baby since Greg entered the chat, but go off, girl. This is more attention than you've had this last 3 season. Mwah. Little Miss Baltimore scammer. And then she says 39 turning 40 at that girl. You're down bad. Good night. You're welcome. Well, now, I don't really care about their back and forth. I'm not really invested in Jazzy or Keiarna. I will say I'd rather have Jazzy than Keiarna because I feel like Jazzy gets the party started. Keiarna gives, she's trying, but the performance review ain't it. But I will say, honestly, I'm not invested in either one like that. I'm not. So this back and forth didn't really move me. What I will say, though, is if they get rid of both of them, it is what it is. I'd be fine with it. So they run Tia's package. Not much was there, but when we get back on the stage, Andy ends up asking her if she had any hesitation on getting on the show based off of, like, you know, her being British and things of that nature. I think he ended up asking, like, a culture shock. She said not really, but she was a little worried because she did watch Lisa Vanderpump, and she says a lot of her relationships kind of deteriorated based off of people not understanding her humor. So that was the only thing that she was worried about. But honestly, she hasn't had any issues. So then there's a question posed to Tia about, girl, how come we never see her husband? Mind you, we did see her husband. So I was actually surprised that this was a question. She just says Rob is a very corporate guy, so the cameras ain't really what he's down for. But he really did not love the nanny statement, so now he's kind of being defiant about, like, doing things in the house because he feels like you think I'm the nanny. And she was like, you know, I said that, but honestly, I didn't mean it to, like, hurt his feelings. Ashley jumps in and she was like, well, we all say things, but, like, we know that's what it is. And she says, well, we are kind of the nannies of our children. That's what Tia follows up. And she says, you know, he was a little sensitive about it, but she was like, if I can be honest, verbal abuse is my love language. I said, girl, can you just say, you know, cracking jokes at each other, or, you know, like picking at each other is your love language? Saying verbal abuse is your love language was not cute to me. Okay. I was like, we need to pick a different word. So the scene continues on with Tia's package, where Andy ends up asking Tia about her relationship with her sister and how a lot of people resonated with the relationship and found it to be fascinating. They flash back to when Tia and her sister Amira are sitting down, and we find out that her dad had 2 kids on her mom outside of the marriage, and that she didn't meet her sister until she was 12 years old. Andy ends up saying, you have such a great relationship with your sister. How do you think your father would feel? Tia immediately starts to get emotional, where she says, you know, you don't realize until you lose someone close to you, like a parent or just a family member, how important family is. She also expresses how her father really, really wanted her and her sister to have a relationship, but she wasn't open to it because she felt like they were trying to force it on to her. And I don't understand why Tia feels so bad that she didn't want a relationship initially with her half-sister after finding out that her father was a deceitful, lying ass whore. Like, love your dad down, but also let's acknowledge how your father made decisions that caused the chaos in your life. If he was lying to those women that he had children with, that he was not married, then he's messed up for creating a broken home, willingly knowing that he was never going to leave his wife, or hoping that his wife would never find out. And then to lie to your mom blatantly. Like, I would not feel bad that I initially, as a child, I was reeling at the fact that the man that I knew and loved lied to me, hurt my mom, and now all of a sudden I got to be cool with people I don't even know, and they're calling me my sister and my brother. Girl, get out of my face. Get out my face. So I wouldn't feel bad about that. So then Gizelle talks about how she was triggered by the story because it resonated with her. She said what was really beautiful was seeing her and her sister go to the childhood home, into the room, and seeing that one day of her dad's birthday. It was like one of those affirmation little card things. And she was like, that was very beautiful. So then Gizelle looks like she's about to cry, and everyone's like, oh my God, Gizelle. Wendy was like, can I get some tissue? And then Giselle's like, I'm good. And Andy's like, yeah, don't worry about it. She's not going to cry. I've been trying to see her cry for the past 10 years. It's not going to happen. But she did kind of tear up during season 8 when she talked about the death of her father. But I guess Andy is like, I need to see like emotion, like real emotion, no holding back. So Andy starts to ask Gizelle about the situation with her father's will. We find out what they were really arguing with or about was about who was the benefactor, basically. And it was either going to be Gizelle or the wife. And the judge ruled in the wife's favor. Gizelle is still trying her best to hold back tears because she said it was very painful. Gizelle also said she was very much annoyed with people saying that she only was contesting the will because she wanted money. And she said it was never about money. The issue was that her father is a very prominent civil rights leader who poses a lot of possessions that tie to the civil rights. And he has a lot of relationships with other civil rights leaders. And he wanted that stuff to be passed down to his grandkids. But she said the silver lining is that the city of Houston is creating a park in his honor. And so regardless of the evilness of his wife, that's still a good moment. My thing about it is the father has to take ownership, or you have to give your father a little bit of blame, Gizelle, that he did not do his due diligence before he left. Like, he should have gotten the will notarized so that his wife could not contest it. Also, if it is true that the wife got him to sign a will when he was incapacitated, that's nasty work if the judge upheld that. But if it's also true that that's a white lady he married, girl, that's nasty work that a civil rights leader married a white lady and now she has all of his civil rights possessions. I will agree with Gizelle. She's evil then, because you don't deserve none of that. None of his black grandkids deserve that stuff, not you, lady. And if she don't give that stuff up, that says a lot about her. Whether you think Gizelle is evil or nasty or not, that says a lot about that lady. Because when my granny passed away, which it's almost been 4 years, I took like jewelry, but I also took pliers. She used to make big bouquets like that you see at weddings. That was her. Everyone in town always called on her. If you was going to have a church event, a wedding, a funeral, an anniversary party, girl, you called Bessie because she was going to get you right. Okay, them flowers were going to be beautiful. And I remember I wanted pliers. I don't know why I wanted those pliers, but I wanted them. I don't even remember seeing her use those pliers as a kid, but I wanted them and I took them. Like, his grandkids should have things of him. And if she is not willing to give that up, that says a lot about that lady's spirit. It really does. A lot about her. Okay? Whether you think Gizelle is nasty, evil or not, them kids ain't do nothing to that lady. She should be giving them their grandfather stuff. So then they talk about the back and forth between Jazzy and Tia. Basically says that she was not trying to disrespect Jazzy's relationship when she was poking fun at Mr. Sunshine being sweet on, what's her name, on Jazzy. Mind you, Mr. Sunshine looked like he could be Darius's father, okay? So when we got in the car, that's what Tia saying. Tia said when we got in the car, she was upset. And so I told her, hey, I wasn't trying to upset you. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to offend you in any way. Then Tia says we get to dinner and she's pointing that fork at me, basically embarrassing herself, essentially. You have Jazzy saying, no, I wasn't embarrassing myself. I embarrassed you. No, Jazzy, you embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed yourself, sweetheart. So then you hear Tia say, you're being very loud right now since you got on this stage. I said, Tia, girl, they gonna whack you next season for the elitism. They really are, because we've seen Ashley yell on this stage. We just saw a back and forth between Ashley, Stacey, Wendy, and Angel. We saw Stacey and Ashley arguing and yelling at each other, but Jazzy is being loud. Girl, they're going to get you. You better chill out. You better chill out, Tia. And so she was like, yeah, and you're giving slightly unhinged. So then they started going back and forth. And then Tia says, you've been picking on me since we've met. And she was like, you chirped up with them shoulders. And so they start arguing about whose husband has money, who husband don't have money, talking about how Jazzy says, I've been working, my husband makes millions, not like your husband. And then Tia says, girl, you told me your husband didn't have a job. And so then Jazzy is like, what are you talking about? And then Tia's like, girl, you told me he took out $150,000 to get you a home and a house. And then Jazzy's like, yes, he took out $150 in cash when he didn't have a team he was attached to to buy me a house and clothes. So what are you talking about? Don't talk about my husband. So they're arguing back and forth. Everyone is really gagged. Like they are like, dang, like they really going at it right now. So then Tia whacks Jazzy where she tells her, girl, you failed at your job. Like you're supposed to be a friend of, but you're a friend to nobody. And I said, ooh, girl. But the thing about it is Jazzy is beefing with Stacy, Keiarna, and Tia. But she's still cool with Wendy, Angel, Giselle, and Ashley. So she still kind of has a majority. But I don't think Jazzy understands as a friend of, you're supposed to like be fun, like supposed to ebb and flow in the group. And I saw people trying to compare her to Brittany from Salt Lake City, but I would say Brittany is a better friend of than Jazzy because Brittany aligned herself with the majority of the group. She tries her best, oftentimes fails, to like move on from things very quickly, but Brittany has also given us a lot of her personal story. All we have with Jazzy is she got married in Dallas, but that's it. We all like, you're a wag, but we don't know anything else about, like, you're a wag and a flight attendant. We don't know nothing else about you, which would make you a better friend of. So if Jazzy does come back, girl, you gonna have to give us more of a personal story and less of you fighting with these women. Because at the end of the day, the friend of is supposed to be the fun friend. Like you come in, you might kick up the mess a little bit, but you still have fun with all of the girls. And right now, girl, it just seems like you're just arguing with people just to argue. So they then transition the conversation to ask Stacy, did she just go to Jazzy's wedding because Wendy told her to, or was she going because she wanted to be there? Stacy never answers the question, and we all know Stacy didn't want to go to that wedding until Wendy told her, girl, you're going to look crazy. You're going to look crazy if you don't go to that wedding. So then Stacy does what Jazzy did, where she doesn't answer the question. She says, she deflects from it, where she's like, she only had a problem with me when I told her I was hurt about her befriending Sharice. And then in the last 15 minutes of filming, because she wanted a moment, she went off on me. So they flash back to when they're in the car. So then Jazzy is like, girl, are you crazy? Like, are you crazy? Like, don't do that. Like, don't do that. Like, you do so well of like kicking up BS. So then Stacy brings up Jazzy recording phone calls, and Jazzy said, don't try to make this small situation a big experience. Then Stacy says, no, everybody knows that Jazzy records phone calls, and who else has had that happen to her? Wendy raises her hand, Keiarna raises her hand, and the thing about it is, I talked about this in my spicy corner. Jazzy says that they edited this kind of choppy, and I did notice a couple of people on Twitter say that they feel like these reactions are not genuine from these women, but it doesn't seem like anybody was really in Jazzy's corner at this point. The people are saying you recording phone calls, Jazzy. So Stacy is like, girl, no, you gave an excuse. But they don't really get nowhere with this. So Andy said, let's move on. Let's just bring Monique out. Because what we gonna do? About the final flop of the season, Monique. The first flop of hers was that outfit, and production was making fun of her. When they panned down to them, the metallic, whatever cuffs she had on her leg and went up, I said, she look a mess. She look a hot, awful mess. Why do you have 2 Doritos strapped to your chest and your back? This looks like something that somebody on Drag Race would create and then get sent home in, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. We also find out that she brought 2 binders. Monique's only pivotal moment on this show is the fight and the binders. Because if you're supposed to be healed, why bring these binders? It's not cute, lady. Like, and if you're so ashamed and you cringe at that moment, why do you think it's funny to bring the binder? Like, I don't know why y'all go up for her, because she's not a great housewife. On paper, yeah, she was great. In practice, basura. She sucks. Very much so. So She gets on stage. Everyone's like, oh my God, look at you. She says that they have the true triangles on her because she found herself in Egypt. I said, okay, girl. Then she sits down and Andy says, oh my goodness, what 5 years? Like, what a difference in 5 years. We find out that the stage that they're on is the first stage that Monique did her first reunion on back in 2017. So then they just discuss how Monique seems like a lighter and different person. And Andy's like, what would you say to Monique 5 seasons ago? What would you say to season 5, Monique? She said, I would tell her it's not that deep. It's you need to calm your ass down, put the weapon down. I don't like Monique, but to say that what happened to her during season 5 was not that deep shows how much she needs to be on this show. She needs that little check. On top of that, how much she wants to be cool with Giselle. Because there's no way I would ever say that what they did to Monique was not that deep. They were going to perpetuate a rumor that she was cheating on her husband with her trainer and that her third child was not hers. Her best friend was actually actively going around town telling people that the miscarriage she had was actually an abortion. And so it's not that deep. Girl, you really want to be on this show. Like, you really want to be on this show, and it's sad. She ends up saying that, yeah, I just would tell her it's not that deep. Giselle ends up saying, yeah, I wish you would have told her that and you would have been that way before. I said, ew. Then she says she cringes at that moment. Girl, she delusional, okay? So Andy lets it be known that they tried to ask Monique to come on the show. Well, before that, Giselle lies and says that after they had that sit down, that she realized that her and Monique should have been able to talk things out a long time ago and that they could have been best friends. You did not like that lady. You actively were mistreating her because you felt like, how dare she have so much confidence and have this wealth and all this stuff? Giselle, shut up. And the fact that Andy sat there and just let her lie like that, crazy. We also find out that they were going to ask Monique back for Ultimate Girls Trip season 2, which was Ex-Wives Club, but she felt like she wasn't ready. Andy says, why weren't you ready? And she said she was still mad. She was mad at production, mad at the network, mad at the show, mad at everyone. But then she realizes that she had to do some self-reflection. And there was a question about how she seems so much lighter and what was her, like, what did she do? She said that she got 350 pounds lighter. Monique, this dig on Chris's weight is giving very much fat phobic tease. And at the end of the day, you was sleeping on top of that man and procreated with him 3 times. You didn't mind him being fat then. So why's the problem now? And he's not even 300 pounds anymore, 350 pounds. He's lost weight. So you look dumb. You look real dumb. And I don't even like Chris. And I don't like you. But you look stupid. You look stupid. So she says that when she was in that relationship with Chris, she didn't feel like, she realized that she didn't love herself. She allowed herself to be depleted. So then they end up starting to talk about how she spoke on Angel's marriage. And Angel basically was like, I didn't appreciate that. You tried to perpetuate this narrative that my husband was mistreating me, and that wasn't fair. Monique says, well, that wasn't the case. I was just speaking on what it's like to be with an NFL. No, you weren't. You tried to make it seem like that man was harming her and that he was mistreating her. Own what you did, Monique, because you didn't like when they spoke about your relationship with Chris. So the conversation continues on where Monique was like, well, you know, I didn't know that Bobby had an issue with me. And what's her name? Angel says, well, he keeps it real. He doesn't want to speak to you because you tried to show him in this negative light. And I think it's okay that he didn't want to speak to you. And he kept it real. Monique tried to say that it was rude. I don't care what you call it. You're trying to say that I'm abusive and that I'm similar to your husband that was a raging Neanderthal that did not help you with your children. That was like, you put in that book, almost choked you out in front of a group of people and almost threw you over a banister. Yeah, lady, I'm not speaking to you. You glad I ain't cuss you out. I'll show you some rudeness if I was Bobby. Because what the hell, Monique? Like, are you serious? So Monique says her only intention when she first met her was basically to make sure that she wasn't in the same situation, because she says that when they met at the Pride event, Angel wanted to talk to her about, you know, she wanted advice. And I'm like, why do you automatically assume the advice she wanted when the cameras were down had anything to do with her marriage and not how she should be showing up on this show? Like, what are we talking about, Monique? And so Monique was like, well, I saw you working yourself down and I didn't want you to get depleted and things of that nature. Then Tia and Keiarna jump in and they were like, Bobby did everything for us. And then Angel says, I have a good marriage. I have a great marriage. He treats me great. He's a great man. So then they start talking to Stacey about was she with Chris Samuels. Stacey says she wasn't. In the picture that they keep posting, they were at a party together. They showed back in Nevis when Stacey said that her and Timu were dating different people and that Chris was one of the people that, like, you know, she hung out with. Stacey tries to say that she never really dated Chris, but they did hang out. But they're like, no, you kind of insinuated that he was one of those guys. And she said, no, we talked to each other, but it didn't go any further. You end up hearing Monique say, honestly, I don't have any issue with Stacey. I actually enjoy watching her on the show. But the thing about it is some stuff came back to me, and it seems as though you have been basically running your mouth. I don't care about this situation with Monique. I don't care if Stacey was the one running her mouth. I don't believe that it's Stacey, to be honest. I saw the sneak peek. It gives very much so that this was a concerted effort to make Stacey look crazy, because these receipts are not receding. At the end of the day, you spoke negatively about your husband on camera, well, your ex-husband on camera. Whether Stacey told him or not, he was going to see it, and that's why you were sent a cease and desist that night, the night before the reunion. It is what it is, Monique. Like, maybe somebody else on, like, in production told him. We acting like people don't run their mouth to different blogs and Chris is not connected in the city. I just feel like trying to pin this on Stacey is wild to me. But I've talked for too long. That was the reunion. Those three ladies flopped for me. And I guess I'm kind of looking forward to the third part, but I feel like Karen's going to piss me off. But hey, as always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'm out, y'all.